All right, so reset, we get started, right? We're in that big transformation. That's what I said. I hope Maya and Erich, you were hearing what I was saying. Poly crisis going on, right? A lot of things happening in recent years. We don't need to talk about it. Everybody is aware of this. Multiple transformations going on. And Maya, that's something where you give some insights. One big question for all of you, I mean, for me, super interesting to understand, where are we actually in this transformation towards a sustainable and healthy planet? Are we just at the beginning, just at the tip of the iceberg? And I think that's also a good question for everybody in the audience, just to reflect on, like, what is coming. But maybe we get started with this. Erich, you want to jump in? Where are we in that big transformation?
Well, wonderful to be with you all. And I think the answer to your question, Lennon, is we are behind. We are not on track. We have some amazing ambition, and I think some great innovative pioneering work happening across the business world, across the finance world, but we are stuck in 20th century structures that limit what is possible. And we are pushing the limits of those structures. We are pushing the limits of what the corporate models of 20th century business can do. We're pushing the limits of what a finance-focused, financial extraction-focused financial sector can do. We're getting innovative, finding some win-wins, finding some opportunities. But the really big steps, we're falling behind. The big transformations, we know what we need. We know how circular economy can work in fashion. We know how circular economy can work in electronics and other products. We know that we need to move towards agroecology. We know we need to move towards slow tourism, and we know we need to transition our energy systems. But our structures are holding us back. And I think it's time for us to start looking at those very clearly and honestly and think, are they still fit for purpose, or are we losing time by being embedded in 20th century structures that were not designed to do the things we are pushing them now to do?
So maybe then over to you, Ingo, are we too slow in that transformation? Are we right at the beginning? Do things need to happen faster? There's also one thing that was in Maya's presentation, urgency.
Sure. Everybody knows that. We are too late. We are lazy. We are doing the wrong things. We are not doing it fast enough. And I'm sure that everybody in the room knows that. So I'm a little bit confused about the question. We all know that we need to act now. But unfortunately, we do not act fast enough. And we know solutions. We see wonderful startups here. We know business models that could help to change and to shift the paradigms. We know them, but we are not acting because we feel so comfortable in the situation where we are right now. And this is something that drives me personally very crazy.
Yeah, but then the follow-up question really, maybe also, Maya, to you, that's something that you're investigating. Why is that not happening? If, as Ingo says it, we know what needs to be done. Maybe also hypotheses, not everybody is fully aware in that impact bubble for sure, but what really hinders us? There are reasons for it, right?
Well, I think I would, nail two that are not very encouraging in first place, but I think putting it on the table is necessary. And I do think we have to start from a geopolitical point of view, because when you look at what's happening right now, is because of the structures having changed too slowly, we have a fight over securing the access to remaining resources. And this is what we're all talking about. And there we have a way that we've institutionalized international collaboration that is a very corporate one. And so the way that we're organizing access to resources that sit in other territories is by having contracts for corporations that will use those resources to put them in their production systems. That means in order for them to get the investments, they will have to use them very short term and produce stuff with it, and we have to buy it. And this is why I think this point of how do we still have the structures in place that allow for us to slow down and to save and to regenerate is a hugely important one. And it has to start with understanding what's the division of labor between states and corporates. And we do have to understand that every corporation that has to deliver on profit schemes in the short term will have to use the resources it has bought access to and funnel it through and make us buy it. And this is the accelerating feedback loop. And this is why we have to get totally clear on there is a role for states to protect the commons. Corporations cannot do that. And it's from Garrett Hardin, who's put it out with the tragedy of the commons in 1968 already. We see it in the global risk reports, everything that we call a global common, meaning the environmental integrity we've inherited, but also something I would call the commons that we've achieved, the public commons, like good health systems or having security and having peace, is something that depends on collaboration. And we've made collaboration for slowing down something impossible through the way that we've been driving our economic systems. And we've mixed the role of corporations and states. When we talk about international relations, we still think about states making agreements, but it's a huge mix. And we have to untangle this in order to understand where can we start acting. And then you have a big cry of, oh, this is anti-trade, anti-free trade. But for some, it's not all free. And when you talk about markets being free, then we have to get out of oligopoly structures. Then we have to say some corporations have become far too huge for markets to be able to function because they can blackmail states. And we see it everywhere. And this is why it is important to talk about the structures. You then understand, can they help us slow down, regenerate, or do we really have to talk about it at that level and not shy away from it because some people want to put a socialism, communism, whatever anti-label on you? It is simply the feedback loops that are in the system right now. And then unless we talk about those drivers, how are we going to stop them?
But maybe there also, Stefan, your viewpoint, I would say most companies might not have the incentive to change then, Maya, as you said, to kind of include the commons, include the impact that they have, the negative impact as well. What's your take on this, Stefan? How do you see the role of companies there and the transformation that should happen but might not happen as fast enough?
Maya, thank you very much for your inspiring keynote, and unfortunately, I have to nearly fully agree with everything you say as a representative of a company. And certainly we at Veleda asking ourselves, can we make a difference here? And I think we are in a more comfortable solution when it comes to purpose-driven business than other companies because our shareholders have not the same expectations to take profit out of the company. So they have high expectations of profit, but not in an economic or in a financial isolated perspective. And I'm asking myself if we are shifting here at the group into something like a problem trials at the moment, and really focused what is the problem, why is the problem there. And my experience from the work in a company is that it sometimes opens room for new solutions when we shift into this what-if mode. So what if we act as if there were these examples of companies that make a difference? And I see here thousands of examples here in the area. So really that we focus on where we see some islands where change is happening and focus on them, focusing ourselves in our perception and try to shift in this solution mode. Because we know the problems, they are well defined, we know all the reasons why things are not growing, we know all the clusterfuck scenarios, end of the century, we know all this, but this is not part of the direction we want to go. So I would invite us to shift into the other way.
Ernst, and that's, very Stefan, your applause here. Ernst, that's also a big topic, of course, for you, right? With the donut economy, something where you want to have that paradigm shift in businesses. But you also see probably some limitations where things are not going. You have a lot of good examples out there. As Stefan also said, we need to point out to these, but then also understand why that's not happening maybe as fast as we wish.
Yeah, I mean, we worked with over 300 companies over the last couple of years to understand what is holding business back. The big ideas are on the table. You talk to staff in the research and development team. You talk to junior staff that are coming in that want to make a big change. You talk to some investors that have big ambitions or founders that have big ambitions. And you realize that time and time again, they are stuck within the straitjacket of a model of an enterprise design that doesn't allow them to make the investments internally, that doesn't allow them to make some of the choices such as discontinue a product for a while or transition away from a very profitable but damaging product or service, that doesn't allow them to maybe grow slowly or not grow at all or even shrink sometimes, because that might be what the role of that company is in the long term. Time and time again, when we dig underneath and we think, what is stopping you? You know you need to move away from single-use products. You know you need to move away from fast fashion. You know you need to move away from clients that are damaging the planet and driving inequality. What is stopping you from taking the actions that are needed? When you dig deep enough, you come across an ownership model, a governance structure that is saying you must extract as much for finance as possible out of this. And everything is built around that premise. And you can only do good if you are in pursuit of that goal. Now, what we came across during that as well is examples of alternatives, examples from the steward ownership movement, examples that have governance models like nature is represented on the board, workers from the supply chain are represented on the board, models where half the profits are reinvested into the social impact of the company, models that allow much more liberty for that purpose to be driven. And we also saw others that were limited in what they could do, but they were overselling what they were doing. They were greenwashing to an extent because there were opportunistic things that had some positive impact, but it was actually slowing down the broader transition of that industry. So for us, it became very clear. If you want companies that are going to help humanity into the donut, help humanity to live within the means of this living planet and meet the needs of all people so that people and planet thrive together, we're going to need new kind of structures and we're going to need new kind of finance that allows those companies to prioritize their purpose, sometimes grow slower, sometimes deliver lower profits. And mind you, I'm not talking about companies that make losses. We're still talking about commercially viable entities, but the pressure to maximize, extract dividends more and more, the exits for investors higher and higher, that is a destructive force that we've accepted. And then we've built solutions around that force and celebrated those solutions, saying, look, the win-wins. And we're delaying, I think, the big transitions and transformations that will actually be necessary to take the big steps.
Maybe let's dive a little bit deeper. So when we also spoke prior to the panel, it was really about, does finance actually dictate it all? Maybe Maya, over to you. Is that the driving force even behind businesses, that finance is the dictating power, expecting these kind of returns, expecting these kind of operations?
Well, when you hear from people that are trying to do things differently, they do say capital markets are steering us. And then when we're thinking about what is the kind of hero story that we're all still attaching ourselves to and repeating in the media, it is a lot about who's become the first unicorn in this and that, whether it makes a lot of sense to have yet another unicorn that's delivering groceries to people instead of them walking into the shops. I'm not sure if this is what we need unicorns for right now. I have a lot of other ideas that I would love to see a lot of money go into. And so this is why the way that we talk about success and that we talk about what are the most valuable companies, you look at the rankings and it is the stock market value, even though you've seen a lot of buyback initiatives so that you're manipulating your share price in order for you to look good, and then short-term bonuses are being paid on the short-term company outlook, and then you have the reds in especially in IT companies, you see it a lot, etc. It's not really a business model that works for now, but there's a huge promise on it potentially working in the future that allows for a lot of that money to flow in there. So instead of trying to connect with solving problems that we have on the place right now, it is a lot of imaginary space of who could make a lot in the shortest period of time, potentially in the future, that attracts the most of that risk capital. And when you talk to people that are really maintaining the well-being of our society every single day, because they're nurses and they're teachers and they bake our bread, etc., and then you see that all of those companies and their value is plummeting, and basically we're then starting to talk about, oh, the agriculture sector is only contributing now 0.5 to 6% to our GDP. It's not so important. Duh. I think feeding ourselves is quite important. And so we're still adhering to the narratives and to the really, I think the topic or the title tyrannies does help there, because it makes a lot of people to run after the wrong solutions and to run after making a lot of money and then prove themselves to be valuable or great or achieve things where they can't say what is the social and environmental impact and benefit that you've brought out. And we need to push back on that. We have to change these stories of heroism and have to give them a foundation that will allow for us to understand what's the contribution. That's the whole idea of a social license to operate. that's been at the essence of corporations. And we've really vacated that from a meaning.
Ingo, that's certainly something you're working on, like really bringing impact investing out there. Is it still the tip of the iceberg? How do we make that bigger? Like really practical? Because I think also here we keep talking about these topics for quite some time, but still they're out there, right? Finance is still dominating in that direction as you just outlined.
Well, for sure, the financial system is dominating our business system because this is a fuel of our business. It's finance. And the question that every business decider is raising is, how much do I need to invest and how much will I gain? And this is how our business works. So it is always about earning money, getting more than I put into the system. And I don't think that we can change the world by implementing steward ownership models or something like that. Because I cannot imagine that, for example, Qatar oil system is getting into a steward ownership model. I'm not sure about you, but I could not imagine that this will happen in the next 1,000 years. We need to find a way that the business owners and the financiers, that they get an incentive to invest money and earn. Maybe it is kind of a kind of value by the community or something like that. But even better, it would be if people invest in impact and earn money with that. And from my point of view, this is how we can cure the capital system. I mean, our company is called like that. Kappa Cura means curing the capital market, because we only invest in those companies that change the world for a better, and they exist. And we can just stop buying ugly and nasty products and change it, because we are the people. We can do it every single day. We have the choice in the supermarket. We have the choice when we go to a consultant and ask them, well, what is your company doing? But for some reason, we don't do it. And what is the reason? The reason is we think maybe this is a better way to do this or that because the profit is high. And I'm fed up with that.
So, average, we won't have that big transformation of a lot of companies. So then the question is, how do we handle this? How do we make sure they are guided in the right direction? One topic that we're discussing quite a lot is regulation. And there's one of the big topics that is very emotional. A lot of businesses will say regulation is bad per se. Others will say that's the holy grail. Do we see more restrictions on companies that will not go down the impact route, that in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, they will be more heavily regulated? Even more, maybe lose their license to operate?
I mean, I think even some of the most, regressive corporate leaders are acknowledging the importance of regulation behind closed doors. When you talk to them about it, they say, look, we need an even playing field. Like, of course, maybe personally, I work in this company that does a lot of damage. I would like to change it, but I can't do it if it's going to disadvantage me against my competitors. They will just do it and they'll become bigger and we're back to where, even worse situation. So I think the debate of regulation or no regulation is outdated. I think that ended a little while ago. It's more about where is regulation needed to be smart and effective, and where is it not going to be enough by itself? Because there are some things we can quantify. We can quantify climate. We can quantify elements of biodiversity, maybe. We can quantify some of the planetary boundaries in an effective way at a corporate level. But regulating at a national level is going to be incredibly difficult. So we're going to, in addition to this, need international agreements. And we're going to need, in addition to this, corporate models that are not trying to sidestep, that are not then jumping to another country where there's lower regulation, punishing countries for bringing in regulations. They're not ones that are trying to get around it and find loopholes and lobby against it to water it down. And that's only going to happen if we also start to change the design of companies, the way that we've embedded a purist and monopolistic control to finance. Now, I think I disagree with Ingo on some of this, because I agree that we're not going to turn every company into steward ownership. There will be maybe millions of different models that are very bespoke for different industries. But if we give up and we just say, look, finance it rules the roost here. Finance is king. It is going to demand to extract as much as possible. Let's find solutions within this. If we give up on the design of companies and just accept this design that occurred in the 20th century around essentially optimizing around the scarcity of financial capital, which is a little bit of a myth now. Financial capital is not scarce as it was in the 20th century, and we built corporate and financial systems with that premise at the heart of it. If we just give in and accept that, we're going to limit what's possible. We're going to slow our ambitions. But if we also, I think, look at it with a level of honesty, and it's incredibly difficult. I too look at this and I work with startups and corporate leaders and business networks and investors around the world. And it is such a difficult conversation because we're talking about becoming an enterprise for an economy that doesn't exist yet. Where we have to compete in today's economy, but we're trying to become something that belongs in tomorrow's economy. And that is difficult. That is scary. So we want to then run to, let's just accept the system as it is and let's work within it. And look, there are some nice things we can do and some win-wins we can create. And there's a bit of regulation we can bring in and that's a comforting story we can tell ourselves. But I think time and time again, it becomes very clear that the companies that are going to lead the charge on some of this are the ones that have liberated themselves from the curse of monopolistic control of finance and have found innovative ways to limit it. And it doesn't mean finance doesn't get a return. It just means it doesn't constantly control everything. It doesn't get all of the board seats. Other stakeholders also get a board seat. The community, nature gets a board seat as well as investors. They get a return. They get a fair return, but maybe there's a cap on the upside. So my challenge there now to those in the audience, maybe those that are founders of startups that are talking to venture capital, and that venture capital might be, an impact fund even, that look, open up the terms sheet and negotiate this. Don't just accept the 20th century models of venture capital or private equity or shareholder finance as a given. We can have a different model for the board. We can have a different limitation on what can be extracted, how the exit of the investor is negotiated. We can make this up in a new way. It was made up in the 20th century. This wasn't like a mechanism that's walking around in the forest that is just a natural occurrence. We created a model that said, let's optimize for scarcity of financial capital. Let's give the power and let's give the priority to this. And now we're beginning to innovate new models that are sometimes on the margins, but it's beginning to show the possibilities of something alternative that can be created. There's a role for finance, but it means we will need to re-engage and renegotiate what that role is so we create space for other priorities to take part.
Maybe here, Maya, on what Erich just said, this also requires a fundamental mindset shift. And you mentioned before the word of acceleration. So how do we make sure that we actually accelerate this mindset shift out there? Because it is happening, but still also they're not too fast. How to make it faster?
Well, I think there it's important, next to our roles in different places, our roles as social entities or social beings that are shaping the reference frameworks with which we are imagining what's possible. And I think that's come out quite strongly now, that this notion of, it isn't possible to go beyond what we have right now is holding us back a lot. And you go all the way into psychology that has these findings about us mistrusting others more than ourselves. So we think, we would do a lot of change. We would really dare to do something different. But I don't think the others would come along. And then you have that in social sciences that are showing us that we are anticipating this and fueling it when you listen to the media discourse in a way that die Leute in German, so the people, don't want this, don't want that. And we have a strong impetus towards negative headlines as well, and really blowing up the negative reports. But all the things where people are doing things differently, where they are helping others out, are not attractive enough to make the news. And so this is why we are perpetuating a feedback loop of under-believing what we might be able to do. And this is why I think changing language and changing the reference framework and pushing back on the notions of making the new justify itself under the benchmarks of the old is super important. So what do we mean when we talk about wealth? What do we mean when we talk about progress? What do we mean when we talk about the purpose of money? What do we mean when we talk about markets can do this faster? Do we have structures in place that would allow for market functioning to actually happen? No, we usually don't. And this is why we have to push back on a lot of terminology that is still holding on to something that structurally has changed. And to make sure that we're innovating the way that we're talking and innovating the way that we've organized structures in the way that we can get towards the promises that we've built into that. So why is wealth as accumulating ever more stuff something that is still important in countries like ours that are drowning in waste and drowning in too much in their garages? It was super important after the Second World War to say everybody should have enough. Now this provisioning should go in places where people still don't have enough. Why are we so stuck in this old way of talking about things? And then it is, when we talk about where are we in the transformation, I'd like to tie it to that. We're in a moment that we call it a social tipping point, because we see a lot of uncertainty, a lot of worry about where is it going, and a lot of polarizing forces. And we see that some are outspoken on the one side that are trying to see the new, and some are really protecting the old. And the problem is that we are looking at the world, the narrative of the world views, protecting the old, because it's the normal way of looking at things. So we all have to make an effort to describe the new and push back on why should the old not justify itself as much as the new. And then there's a whole big block in the middle. They're waiting to see which way is it going to tip, because I want to be part of where it's tipping. And this is the responsibility that we all have right now in every single context, to speak up to the things that we would like to see in the world. And it is a bit of risk-taking because it's a heated conversation. But if there's anything right now that we need, is for people to ask for the things they would like in the future and not be pushed down by the ones that are getting more and more aggressive out of the fear of losing what they've been accustomed to. So it's a very social dynamic that we're looking at right now if we want to change the structures that humans have built.
And on this, your applause, yeah. To pick up on this point of the social dynamic also, I mean, we are in that process. I'm not sure how you all perceive it, multiple transformations going on. Maya just mentioned uncertainty. So how much transformation can also a society actually handle? Do you sometimes feel overwhelmed as an individual in that transformation? That would be a question for all of us. And what do we also do then on the individual level to deal with these transformations? Stefan, that was also a topic very important for you, I know.
Yeah. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay. So when I try to describe it in my words from a more therapeutical point of view, I would say the target is that we dissociate from the problems and associate with the target solutions. And then the question is how we come into this new phase. And and I think we all try out. So there is no the one holy grail, and we try to find it. So we have to find out. At Veleda last year, for example, we started a living soil camp where we invited 6 startups from the soil and agricultural area. And we said, okay, what do startups need? Normally they get investment consulting, management consulting, and all this stuff. And we said, no, we want to invite them to grow as a team and to grow as an individual. And we invited them for a U process of Otto Scharmer and a hero journey for 1 week with the idea behind that if they are in a better inner state as an individual and as a group, then the probability of success in the outer impact area will increase. So all this what we see about inner development goals movement or pocket project movement and how you call all these different worldwide movements, all this trauma theory movement. I think this is a good start to understand where am I, what are my inner triggers, how am I triggered by this problem towards, and how can I shift away? And there are more and more solutions. And I think even here in Europe, we are in a very comfortable situation that we can invest resources in this. And I think it's a starting point before we can change the outer world. Otherwise, we are so exhausted somehow. And we have to build up own resources to to maybe fun or joy is the KPI for this, because if we are in a fun and joy mode, we own all our resources we have. We own all our creativity, and we need this. And if we go in this problem towards, it's boring. So we are not the last generation. Yeah, there are many generations coming beyond us.
Aaron, is also your approach, how to stay resilient with all these crises going on?
Absolutely. I think what Stefan says makes a lot of sense and is also something I deploy. I see people around me are deploying to stay resilient, which is we have to make this fun. We have to make this this is the exciting space. We are sitting on this rug here where we are building the future economy. There are people sitting on the other rug trying to hold on to the old economy, trying to make it work within, but this is the space where we are building something new. This is the space of joy, the space of excitement, of innovation, of design. We are designing the future together. So we have to be really embracing this mode of working. At the same time, I think the way I pursue this is also to think, well, if we are going to survive and thrive as a species on this planet, and we have two sides of us, we have a competitive side, but we also have a mutualistic, cooperative, generous side as well. We built an economy that is around the competitive greed side that of human nature, but not based on the mutual cooperative side. And things are going to shift. We are going to have to shift. This is the only way we're going to solve these problems. And the world's going to come along. And we're just at the front end of this. Together, we're starting to step forward into a new economy, a new vision. But the system is going to catch up. It has to catch up. Otherwise, the alternative is too scary to think about. So to believe that people are going to follow, the system's going to follow, we just need to move forward with conviction and with self-care and with a sense of joy and excitement about the companies we're designing, the financial instruments we're designing, the kind of innovations and business models we're designing, and the economic ideas and narratives that we're putting into place through our work.
So maybe also here, just to conclude, Maya and Ingo, that's also something I want to hear from you. What are your approaches, maybe also tips? Do you share the same as Aaron and Stefan on how to stay resilient in all these big transformations? Ingo, what's your take?
Well, first I would like to relate on what Maya said. Communication matters. We need to explain to those disbelievers, to those people out there who do not know, who are not aware of the things that are going on. We need to explain in a polite and appealing way that there's a positive future for all of us. And what you could do individually is to pioneer, to go out, and it needs people like you to communicate all that change positively. And being in a room like this and seeing so much excitement regarding impact and impact investment, this is something that gives me power and energy.
And then maybe we come back also to the bubble. One thing I thought about, because also in the morning we heard about the different bubbles. My first thought was, how do we also bring that out, right? Impact Festival, great community, great people, the energy is here. How do we get that into Offenbach, into Frankfurt, into Munich, wherever, all over Germany? That's probably something we still have to work on as like a impact sphere. But maybe, Maya, over to you. So the communication part, super important. How do you stay resilient in these moments of time?
Well, I think reading about what makes people happy and well-being studies is a huge alleviation, because in times of everybody making sure you're really, really making clear how you're so distinct from everybody else. Now, everybody's crazy. When you look at the essence, humans are quite similar in what they really need and wish for. And that's usually something that has a lot to do with security, with social relationships, and being friendly with each other and being recognized as a participant, as a partaker in where we're at. And so we're not so freakish, not so distinct from every other when it comes down to the essence of existence and what we wish for. And from that moment to say, what makes us special? And this upset of the human self-image, what is the view of human potential that we hold? And it is the old narratives on what is scarce. And I think one thing that we've really not helpfully accepted in the prime narratives of the last 40 years is scarcity in goodness and willingness to cooperate and willingness to look out for the others, because we've been more and more embedded in this story of me, myself, and I. And the rest is not to be trusted. And it feeds on deeper fears, and we can push it back. And we can every single day be proof, on living proof of there is another option. It doesn't mean completely naively and enlightened, smiley, walking through the day, but to say, hey, every no has an end. No, I don't want to go there. And there is another way we could go jointly if you'd like to. So really have the imagination of there is something more accommodating of our human needs at the basics that can be that well-being economy in the future. And then step by step, every single day, to just say, let's stop that and let's move a bit more in direction. In complexity terms, you would say the adjacent possible. So have a radically different vision, and every single day see where is the next step that now, in this context, can help us move in that direction. Because then we all trust each other more and can start from a different baseline the next day. So it's radical incrementalism, and then always in this full-on belief that humanity is much more than an old story of egotistical homo economicus.
So we've come a long way from talking about shifting paradigms. How do we make that transformation happen? Really from that big picture view of how do we redesign our economic models, maybe the financial world, what holds us back, all the way now to the personal level. How do we handle these transformations? And you just gave me food for thought. This could be another topic for the next year's Impact Festival, that we really focus on the well-being and the human potential in the impact world. I think that would be a nice topic. That's something we all have to work on and can consistently work on. With this, I would say thank you very much to my panel. Thank you very much, Stefan, Ingo, Erinch, and Maya. Big applause for sharing the insights and being with us here today.
Thanks.